Hey guys, it's Super here. So today let's go through 7 Sages of Liuli internal injury boss. So you can see I've attempted it already, but let's go through the skills first before we attempt the boss itself. Basic attack, Mystic Rui does damage to a single enemy. Afterwards, deal extra damage to all other enemies without stealth and inflicts 1 layer of exclusive Fulu on them. So this will be removed when the enemy is granted with stealth. And explosive Fulu when stacked to 2 layers deals 120% damage to all allies of the owner containing this effect, and afterwards inflicts 1 layer of exhaustion which reduces enemy mastery. So this is a pretty big deal, 84% mastery. Next we have the second active skill, which grants Self Divine Domain, which will be invalid immediately when Self has severe wound or is inflicted with severe wound. So I believe this Divine Domain only refers to these 2 effects, which is gain 24% turn meter after casting the basic attack, and additionally gain 4 layers of Powerful Might, which is the thing which determines the fight's length. When Powerful Might stacks to 20, the fight ends. And then this section, I believe, is separate to this Divine Domain part and is simply part of the skill itself, where she inflicts Immortal's Deterrence on all enemies and reduces damage taken by targets, with Immortal's Deterrence to Aniru by 90%, and for every 1 enemy with Immortal's Deterrence reduces Aniru's damage taken by an additional 20%, and this will be removed when the owner launches basic attacks or active skills to pursue and attack once. So we do need the pursue and attack tag. When any enemy casts active skills to counter attack and deals crit damage, so basically only Felicia, because crit damage isn't really specific to internal injury except for Felicia, removes explosive Fulu owned by all enemies. Explosive Fulu once again is this initial effect here, and increases enemy damage dealt to Aniru by 300% for 2 turns. Then the passive is just a pretty standard Liuli boss passive where you need 5 characters of the internal injury tag. And the last one, also very standard for Liuli bosses, when Powerful Might is stacked to 20 layers, she will just slay the entire team. So let's take a look at the rankings today, and what you can see is that the first player actually no longer uses Dianmu and Indra. So this was the case in difficulty level 6 where everyone was using Dianmu Indra, but this time you can see the number 1 player is actually using Tyrell and Kratos as well, which is pretty interesting because I believe the reason why they are not using Dianmu Indra is because Dianmu Indra cannot really counter attack, which is one of the effects that you need. So let me just go to the filter option and find the counter attack tag. So I guess they just want this. Okay, yeah, there is counter attack over here, and you can see if we put counter attack plus internal injury, the options aren't too great, right? And Dianmu Indra is not part of that. I believe that's why this guy who's at the top isn't using it. Dianmu is still being used mainly for the speed up too, and then we do have Kratos here for severe wound over here, and then Tyrell I imagine is for deep internal injury, which is on her basic attack. So on the players who are below him, second place and so on, are dealing quite a bit less damage. You can see 4.3 billion, 3.7 billion, and these players are all using Dianmu Indra. I did do some testing by myself, and this was the best team which worked for me. I did try using removing Indra and putting in Kratos, and it didn't work as well, but I did only do fights where I skipped. I didn't manually do the fight, so we can see how or what's causing the issue later on. Besides this is for Legendary Division. I have taken a look at the fights in Ultimate Division, and at least when I'm recording this video, which is only roughly about 2 to 3 hours into the event, the number 1 player has 12 billion damage and is actually using Bill, which I thought was pretty interesting. So when I was making my video testing Bill at Exclusive 0, I did mention that I felt that he was pretty useless, at least for Exclusive 0, and I felt that he would only really be used in content for the future. And I guess as long as the team that we are seeing remains to be the same, obviously still early into the event so teams may change, but Bill does seem to be a very solid option at Exclusive 3 for this boss, which is nice to see because at least getting him has some purpose now. I can build him in the future. Additionally, players seem to be using Jubei as well. No one in my division seems to have or use Jubei, but the top 2 players at least in Ultimate Division currently are using Jubei in their team. So just to let you guys know, the first place player is using Kratos, Bill, Tyrell, Jubei, and Felicia with Frost Spectre pet. but of course we don't have many of those options. I do have Tyrell, but you can see it's exclusive 0 and unbuilt. So anyway, before we go into the manual fight, I just want to do some rough testing with the skip feature, so we're doing the battle test, and I just want to see roughly what gets me the most damage. So you can see over here we have about 2.7 billion with this Kratos and Shaorin, and yeah, so around that range. And then as you saw when I did my fights initially, if I put in Indra over here, the damage should be slightly higher. So yeah, it's pretty strange to me because Indra itself isn't really doing any damage, yet somehow this causes Felicia to do more damage. I'm honestly not 100% sure what's causing this, but besides that, I did do some other testing. I tried doing Kratos instead of Shaorin, since both of them primarily are there for severe wound, although Shaorin does give deep internal injury as well. You can see that this actually works pretty well. Just one more test fight over here. So Kratos seems to be perhaps a better option actually than Shaorin, since he also inflicts severe wound and Kratos on his own does a decent amount of damage. But you may notice that these characters, Indra especially, is doing much less damage than you may expect, and similarly Kratos isn't actually doing that much damage either. So I do know why this is happening, or at least I have a very good suspicion for it, and we will talk about it when we try the fight itself. So just trying some random other teams. I didn't really expect build to work, but this seems to be the best team that we can use, and now let's do an actual fight with it. So let's just do one quick check if this is everything that we want, and let me just remember to put the right equipment on our Spirit Beast. So let's swap this out for this one over here, and actually what I should have done as well is to test different pets on the boss. So we'll do that, and then we will go straight into the fight. So let's just do a quick test. So this is Unicorn Pet, and our damage is about 3.7. Yeah, so the damage increase from changing the equipment was pretty good. Now we try Divine Griffin. I don't expect this to be that great. Yep, so much less. And then let's just try Frost Spectre, which is what people are using in Ultimate Division, but this reduces my survivability by quite a lot, which is what I do need at this stage. So we will be using Unicorn Pet over here. So this is the team, and let's just go into battle. So normally, at least in difficulty 6, you do need to be very careful with when you use Murong-Jing's stealth special tool, but I believe for difficulty 7, since we do have this mechanic which involves Felicia, where whenever you have an enemy which does crit damage, which is just basically any time my Felicia attacks, he removes this exclusive Fulu, which is the thing which reduces your mastery, so I don't actually have to think about it that much. And now let's continue the fight, and I'm just going to auto for here, and you can see at the start my characters are dealing damage, right? You'll see that my Indra does basically his standard amounts of damage, same with my Kratos, but what you'll notice fairly early on is that my characters are going to stop dealing damage, and I believe now if we do an attack with any of our characters besides Felicia, they're actually all going to do 1 damage over here. So the reason for that is this, let me find it, is this effect over here, this one which has this like demon looking icon, and I believe what's causing that is this section over here, the Immortal Deterrence. So the issue is that we don't have any characters which counter attack, right? Dianmu Indra does not deal, well actually it's not this part, it's over here. So inflicts Immortal Deterrence on all enemies and reduces damage dealt. So the only way to remove this is if the owner launches basic attacks or casts active skills to pursue an attack. So the pursue an attack part is really important. And the issue is that I don't believe, Dianmu Indra does not counter attack, neither does Murong-Jing, and I don't think Kratos might as well. So we'll keep track and see if we see Kratos deal any damage. But for Dianmu Indra, basically after the start, they aren't going to be dealing any damage. That being said, when we did the battle test, when we replaced Indra with someone like Shaorin, we did not actually we actually saw a drop in performance, so I'm also not 100% sure what Indra contributes to the team over here. Let me just take a look at... Yeah, I'm not really sure, because it's not like he has the... Yeah, honestly I have no idea, but for some reason he works better for the team. If you guys know why that's the case, then of course let me know, but this only applies to my specific scenario, as we saw from the top player in my division and the one in Ultimate Division. Neither of them are using Indra at all. So right now we can just basically auto it, and what you should notice is that basically only my Felicia is going to be dealing damage, right? And why is that? That's because she can counter attack, and because she can counter attack, she doesn't get this this debuff over here, this demon icon which we just talked about, and so she is able to deal damage. Same with Kratos, you can see here he counter attacks and he's able to remove the debuff. Because of that, Kratos is able to do damage as well. And yeah, only these two characters are going to be able to do any form of damage to the boss. Everyone else, since they can't counter attack, can't. And I guess that's perhaps why Bill, Jubei, and Tyrell seem to be very strong characters. I'm not 100% sure. Well, we also can't check because we're in game, but I believe perhaps all three of them are able to counter attack themselves, and if that's the case, then they can consistently do damage throughout the fight. But otherwise, you are limited by the characters which are able to counter attack. So once again, there are players still using Dianmu, which I think is perfectly fine, once again just for speed up 2, but the number 1 player in Ultimate Division who's using Bill is using Bill instead for speed up 2, so I'm sure that is much more useful than using Dianmu over here, which basically does nothing else for this team besides speed up 2, and I guess some turn meter increases, but Bill is simply better at that. But yeah, you can see our damage over here. So far we're at almost 2 billion damage and it's 12 turns. She does have the mechanic which, if we saw just now, she can get more stacks of her, if we can find it, Powerful Might over here. But this is she only gets these additional layers of Powerful Might if we fail to inflict Severe Wound on her, but that's not an issue because our Kratos should do that pretty consistently on his basic attack. And yeah, because he does a lot of pursue and attacks or counter attacks with his basic attacks, you can see we are very, very consistently maintaining the Severe Wound uptime on the boss, so that will never be an issue for us. This means that compared to some of the other bosses that we've seen in the past, we will survive the full 20 turns against this boss. You can see she's gaining these layers of Powerful Might at a normal rate of 1 stack over here every turn, so 14 layers of Powerful Might and 14 turns so far. So the damage is looking good, well, at least for the team that we're using, 2.4 billion, and if our skip fights that we did just now are accurate, I think we'll end the fight roughly in the 3.5 to 3.7 billion range. If we try and extrapolate the values based on the number of turns gone so far, I think we're like 3/4 through the fight, so this should be about 3/4 of our damage, right? So that would be maybe around 800 to 900 million damage every turn, and that will put us at the 3.5 to 3.6 range by the end of the fight, which we seem to be on track for. So yeah, it's really just our Felicia carrying our team for damage, with Kratos doing a little bit extra as well, but everyone else is really useless over here. The only main question that I have, I guess, is why having Indra, or why Indra still works better over something like Shaorin. Because Shaorin does have counter-attack mechanics, which would mean that she's able to deal more damage perhaps. So I'm a little confused as to what's the problem with that. Maybe it's just because when I did my tests, I didn't really bother to re-gear her properly, but I'm still not too sure. So at the end you can see our Kratos still didn't do too much damage. It's just mainly our Felicia carrying. Her build is pretty decent, I would say, and she has a 4-star echo. So of course the damage that we get from her is expected to be pretty decent, and from using that team we did take over the person who was initially at 3rd, you can see over here. And this player used Shaorin instead, which is another option to inflict Severe Wound on the boss, but I think Kratos is probably just strictly better. And yeah, so that's really all we have for today. I think let's just do one last battle test, and let's just try Shaorin once again. Maybe we got unlucky the first time. And yeah, Shaorin's damage is essentially none, and she does have the counter attack tag, I'm pretty sure. If we just take a quick look, obviously build's not good, but even then the damage should be more than just 9 million for the entire fight, right? So I want to see her tags actually, so I should have done that. We can find her over here. And yeah, she does have the counter attack, so either she's not counter attacking properly, or she's dying too fast, which I doubt is the issue, or I'm not sure what's the case otherwise, but anyway, she doesn't seem to be better than Indra in this specific scenario. Let's just use our last skip fight to finish up our attempts, and maybe we'll get lucky and get a slightly higher score. So let's put in Indra once again. And Let's see if the damage is higher. So no. Okay, so our highest damage was still the fight that we did, not manually, but where we actually entered the battle without skipping. And we're third place so far, and I think at this rate, I should be able to maintain at least a top 10, which I'm very happy with. You can see many players are still stuck at difficulty 6. I think you need around over 4 billion damage to progress to the next one, so it's not easy as well. And besides that, for yesterday's one, well, I didn't bother showing this because my burn team is so weak, as you can see. So I am considering getting the burn team, the new burn hero that's coming out, but at the same time I do need to save for the limited time hero, so kind of conflicted. My burn team is horrible. But for poison team, which I did cover, well, actually I did not because of difficulty 6, I'm only covering the difficulty 7 bosses. Okay, for resonance boss, which I did cover a while back, you can see that I did manage to end up in 10th place, which is actually pretty solid and something I'm definitely pretty happy with. So ideally, for today, we stay within top 8, which would be really nice, so I can get this higher tier of rewards, but otherwise, I should very comfortably be in this top 9 to 20 range. So yeah, that's all we have for today, and I'll see you guys next time.